Students made an emotional return today to Majory Stoneman Douglas High School, exactly 2 weeks after the deadly shooting. Upon their arrival, students were greeted by their teachers and school officials who were giving out flowers. But students were also greeted by a significant law enforcement presence in the front of their high school. A reminder that these teenagers are entering a new reality in the wake of the tragedy. Joining me now from Parkland, Florida, is senior David Hogg. He survived the shooting. He's a student reporter turned activist. David, it's been 2 weeks. I'm curious how you're doing and how your other classmates fared today.
Today was a tough day, but it's a day that had to happen eventually. It was always going to come along, and it's one that we had to have to show that we were going to be leaders, and we were going to lead by example for other students across the nation. We needed to come back and show that we stand in solidarity, with our other students, and really come together as a community. And that's what we saw today. Even though when I was walking into school I felt sad, many of us felt empowered and strengthened by the warmth and loving kindness that the world has brought us.
What was it like walking back into that school today? You talk about feeling empowered. What were the other emotions running through you guys?
The other emotions running through me were, I really need to water my garden that we have at the school that's called Majory's Garden, because it hasn't really been watered in the past 2 weeks except by rain. But really what was going on was kind of a mixed flurry of emotions of melancholy, sadness, and happiness at the same time, because you have the reality of coming back and meeting all of your friends, but you also have the reality of knowing that there are 17 individuals that were not there. And every day when I came through school, when I was coming into the senior lot, I would wave at Coach Weiss, and he would wave back at me. I never really said a word to the man in my life, but he was just a loving person, and he showed that every day to me, and it was really hard going through there and having a police officer stand there instead of Coach Weiss.
I know he was such a presence in that school. You and your classmates founded the Never Again movement really within the first 4 days after the shooting. Where do you feel like you're getting the most traction at this point?
I think the most traction that we're really getting at this point is really political action from some of the students stepping up across the nation, and obviously economic action that we're taking against the state of Florida, saying don't come here until reasonable gun legislation is passed. So the reason I came to school today was because there is a bill in the works, and that was enough for me to come back, even though I wish it had already been passed, and I wish there were so many other things that had been done. Change is slow, it always has been. Hopefully it won't always be, but we have to continue to fight on and continue working.
In addition to that bill, David, you've been calling for companies to boycott the NRA. You've backed calls for Amazon, other streaming services to no longer carry NRA TV. What do you say to your critics who say that by attacking that, you're attacking free speech? And doesn't the NRA have a right to broadcast those views?
The NRA does have a right to broadcast those views, but they don't have a right to send out false lies to their supporters, honestly. It's the thing that makes me the most mad is that they allowed this propaganda to continue, and they're able to continue to lie to their supporters at the NRA, like Dana, the spokeswoman. She's not really working for the people of the NRA, she's working for the gun lobby. And I understand that there are critics out there that say that we need to have freedom of speech. I agree. It's just the fact that these companies are supporting them. That's why we're boycotting them. They can carry their messages elsewhere on their own website.
When you say lies, what are you referring to?
Well, when I say lie, I'm referring to some of the propaganda that they're putting out there, saying that we need to be afraid, you need to go out and buy more guns, because that's what Dana at the NRA is pushing. She wants people to go out and buy more guns so that the NRA can continue to be supported by the gun lobby, where we create this positive feedback loop where people they essentially are trying to tell people that they need to be afraid. And I don't agree with that. I don't think the majority of Americans agree with that. And that's something that I think we need to stop. And they do have a right to say what they want. They absolutely do, but so do I.
You know, David, about 20 years ago, the NRA felt that there should be no guns inside classrooms, that they should be safe school zones. And they've obviously changed their opinion over 20 years, now calling for teachers to be armed. I've been speaking to political scientists who say that the Republican Party is becoming more and more conservative on their viewpoints in this particular issue. How do you reach out to those Republicans who disagree with you?
Point out the fact that they're owned by the NRA, honestly. And understand with them, work with them, and realize that we are not trying to take your guns. In the same way that the First Amendment makes it so that you can say what you want almost wherever you want, but there's limitations on that where you can't scream fire in a crowded theater, you shouldn't be able to get a weapon of mass destruction like these guns are. if you're a mentally unstable individual, if you're somebody with a criminal history, or somebody that has committed acts of domestic violence in the past, those are the people that we're trying to prevent from getting guns, not your average citizen. We don't want to take your Second Amendment rights.
You know, Sheriff Scott Israel is coming under increasing scrutiny for his department's handling of the shooting. Do you think that Sheriff Israel should be held responsible?
I think Sheriff Israel should be held responsible in the same way that our politicians should be held responsible. Because at the end of the day, we notice people like Governor Rick Scott and senators and different people blaming the bureaucracy, and that's what they want to aim to do. They want to aim to blame the bureaucracy so that they get reelected, and they distract the American public from who's actually in charge of all of these different organizations, and it's people like Governor Rick Scott that are in charge of them. Yeah. I do agree with the idea that we need to have reforms in some of these organizations. We absolutely do. But I think what the politicians are really trying to do here is push this off on the organizations that they're in charge of, not themselves. Because at the end of the day, they are essentially the CEO of the government, not the people at the very bottom.
What would you like to see happen to Sheriff Israel?
I think Sheriff Israel, honestly, I can't really comment on that because we haven't had a full investigation. We haven't seen what the true motives were behind this. We haven't seen anything like that. Personally, I think Scott Israel is a good man from my little experience with him. Do people make mistakes? Absolutely. But those are mistakes that we need to work through as American citizens, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans for our children's lives. And it is something that we do absolutely have to focus on fixing. But we can't just play the blame game. We have to just focus on fixing it.
You know, one of your fellow students, Manolo Alvarez, told the Miami Herald about Nicholas Cruz, the suspected shooter, that this kid gets bullied a lot. Somehow someone should do something. I definitely regret not saying anything. Do you think that anti-bullying measures are part of the agenda that you're pursuing and should be part of it?
I think that we definitely should incorporate like mental health care and different aspects of reporting these type of scenarios to people, in the sense that whoever said that about Nicholas Cruz obviously hopefully reported him. And there were multiple reports that were misidentified and were not pursued, and that's part of the issues that we have to address here as American citizens, is the fact that there were mistakes made that cost these lives, and we have to work through them and make sure that they don't occur again in the future.
You know, Nicole Hockley, who helps run Sandy Hook Promise, told my colleague Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation this Sunday that she feels that this school shooting is different from the Sandy Hook shooting because these are students now advocating for students. Do you feel that momentum, and how is that propelling you forward?
I feel that momentum coming from my generation, which I would compassionately call not even millennials at this point. We're kind of at the edge of that. We're more Generation Z. I feel that passion in the roar of the crowds at these rallies, where you can feel the passion in your chest and the movement and the change just in the soil of American democracy, essentially. The very foundation of our democracy is being changed, and it's being brought back to what it should be, because the glass that is democracy has been shattered by bullets from these guns, and we've been separated as Americans into Democrats and Republicans, but now we need to come back together, stronger and better than ever, to save our future and these kids' lives.
David Hogg, I want to thank you so much for joining us on what was a very difficult day, clearly, for you and your fellow classmates. Thank you, David.
Thank you.